Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV. And on this show, I greet you live from the All America city of Morrisville in North Carolina, the eighth largest state in our nation, the United States of America. And on this show, we talk about global affairs, the turbulent political world we live in, the changing role of the Supreme Court in our country, democracy around the world, and the war in Ukraine. Today, I'm going to open up and then I'm going to leave, but I'll be back on Thursday. And I wanted to hand the show off to Mark Lee, but I wanted to share some insight and spend a few minutes with you today. But my monologue today is based on Breast Cancer Awareness Month. In the United States, we are actually celebrating Breast Cancer Awareness Month with the notion of RISE, having women rise up and get their early detection mammograms and their screenings so we can avoid this horrible disease, which has taken our mothers, our sisters, our wives, and even men can get breast cancer. There's a myth that men cannot get breast cancer. About 12%, 20% of all women will get it at one time or another. And last year, 200,000 women died from breast cancer. It's a terrible disease, a dreadful monster that just sucks the life out of people and takes their lives. If you're listening to this show and you've lost someone from breast cancer, we pray for you. If you have someone that you love that's going through this crisis and trying to defeat this monster, we pray for you. And just go to breastcancerawareness.org, where you can learn about ways that you can support this great cause of defeating cancer, defeating breast cancer, and finding more cures. As I open up the floor to begin our discussion about different world affairs, we're going to talk about the war in Ukraine. President Biden does seem that he will be running again. He announced it yesterday in a news show. So it looks like it could be a rematch between Trump and Biden. And we're going to be talking about some other things. But my final closeout is what President Biden challenged us with, our own moonshot. A moonshot is when you take a big risk, like when we went to the moon, not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And we, under John F. Kennedy, led the space program. And he did not live to see the day when man walked on the moon. Let's hope by pulling our resources together, and perhaps the monies that we're spending a lot on global domestic politics, we can find a cure for cancer, for breast cancer, not only here in the United States, but all around the world. From our family to yours, we thank you for sharing with me a point of personal privilege today as the moderator of this show. And we will be bringing some speakers on to talk about cancer research. On Thursday, we have the Kari Diwali, the largest Southeast Indian festival, which is in Cary at the Kokobuth Amphitheater with expected attendance around 20,000 Indian Americans. Now, I'm going to hand the controls over to Mark Lee, and I'll be with you for a few minutes. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Glad that you brought up breast cancer. It's definitely a issue that has hit the family and friends of mine. I actually know some that have had mastectomies, either partial or I think in one case a full one, and all of that. So it's definitely a issue that has hit in the family and friend circle that I am a part of, and definitely I know some people that are involved in the research of that, as well as folks that have been impacted by it as well. So it's definitely something to bring up, and hopefully that they are doing more and more research in that space. And of course, as you say, we do pray for those that have dealt with that on various ways and all in that space. And I'll bring up Chris Greco, because I know that Chris is also one that is very much involved in that health space and definitely has some thoughts around health issues, having some of his own, and definitely is oftentimes talking about health and the way that health impacts us and all along those lines. And at some point or another, I may try to bring that friend of mine on, because they are actually a singer and that I am very close with, that they can talk about their experiences as well as some of the things that they have learned. And like I said, I do know some people that are involved in some of the activities of terms of awareness and things in that space. So I might try to see if they are available as well. And I'll also bring on Lee Newton Rhodes. I don't know if he's got any experience in that space, but it is one that is very important to talk about, and all along those lines.
He definitely does. Right, Lee?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
You know
Absolutely. Well, folks, I'm gonna hand a couple of things I want you to talk about before I hand the controls over to Mark. Real quickly, and Lee, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
We'll discuss it when I come back on Thursday, but I want to continue our discussion of the changing role of the Supreme Court. I think that's something that we're going to talk about with the gerrymandering case and the voting cases before the court. I think we need to clarify some of the things on the show. We're going to talk about the war in Ukraine, North Korea firing weapons, nuclear weapons over Japan, which is quite scary. And we're also going to talk about President Biden's recent announcement that he will be running again to seek the Democratic nomination and to be the president of the United States, the White House, for a second term.
So I say how this is, Steve. You drop that in and then you leave.
No, I'm not saying I'm the moderator. I'm just throwing.
I'm the moderator.
I'm just putting you on notice.
Just the moderator.
Tomorrow
it does look like it's going to be a rematch between Trump and Biden. And the only thing I'll leave you with politically is, and I'm going to lean towards, believe it or not, I'm going to agree with Shaquille Latimer. My prediction is that this is going to be a tough election for the Democrats, because I think that the economy, inflation, gas prices, along with immigration and the influx of illegal immigrants coming into the border, I think are all going to be just too much to help the Democrats win. Even though they've had some wins with the bipartisan infrastructure and some of the bills, at the end of the day, I think the pocketbooks of the American people will drive turnout down in some of these communities. And so that's just my opinion. But I know Democrats probably aren't happy with my analysis, but I think they should be prepared for some significant losses across the board. And I'm hoping it's not a gridlock with a Democrat in the White House and Republican House and Congress. But maybe they'll only get one house. But I'm sorry, Democrats, I'm being a negative Nelly, but I think the economy.
As I've said before, I think that the Democrats have got things that they can actually say that would work, that would resonate, such as, look, we're trying to do something, we're actually governing. What are the Republicans offering? The Republicans are just saying, well, we're not going to do anything because it's better off giving power to the people. So we'll do nothing to let the people do everything. So at least the Democrats can spin it and say, look, we've tried to do something. Some things have worked, some things haven't, etc. And this is why I think the poll numbers aren't looking as good as what you might have thought they were going to look like coming into the midterms. If you don't take back the
what has worked?
I'll be back on Thursday, but Shaquille, thank you. We'll have those conversations on Thursday and Friday.
We'll have those conversations on Thursday.
As I said, I'm coming out swinging tomorrow because what I actually reacted to was just
love you, Steve.
Yes, take it easy, Steve, and he'll come out swinging. But I hear what you're saying, and all along those lines. And if I remember correctly, folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the ruling party or the party that's in office oftentimes does not do that well in midterms. I think historically that has been the case, because a lot of times turnout is down in the midterms versus those big 4-year elections and all in that space. So I would not be surprised
Mark.
if it's not a massive defeat and all of that. But yes, Lee, was I wrong in my?
Yeah, I think you're just being polite. You're being very polite. Why the Democrats are going to get a slaughtering now? And instead of looking at what they're saying, look at what they've done for the last year. It's not a record that I would want to run on. How about, are you proud of what happened? This last
Well, like I
year,
said,
last
the last year I've not been proud of, well, the last several decades, and I've said this before on the show. Sometimes Shaquille gets on me because he thinks that I am wavering and all of that, but I have not been that proud of either party in the way that they handle politics and all of that, be it Democrat or Republican, and in that space. And along those same lines, I'm sitting here looking at an article and I'm going like, okay, here we go again in terms of using the media. I know that Nick loves the media and everything. And yes, I'm being sarcastic when I say that, to target them or to target one of them if you are the candidate that is being looked at as the favorite to win your party's nomination. Because the latest news out now is that Trump is suing our lovely friends at CNN for defamation, and he's seeking $475 million. So that is the latest news.
That would triple his net worth if he won it. Oh, wait, is that a defamatory statement? I'm sorry,
but you have to say it's great publicity, isn't it? What's a lawsuit cost? It might cost him, $5-10 million. I have no idea, right?
Not that much.
And if he thought he was,
he hires cheap lawyers.
But every network would cover the case, and it's just cheap publicity. Maybe I should sue CNN.
There you go. But you have no cause of action, Shaquille.
Exactly,
or you could say it's because
it doesn't matter. I don't need
they don't recognize how brilliant you are on CNN.
Nick, it's America. It's America. I don't need to have cause of action. I'll just sue them, and then when we get closer to the trial, after I've had all the free publicity, I'll just drop the case and I'll say, "Look, we decided on a settlement."
But Shaquille, you said you don't have any cause of action and things along those lines. I hear what you're saying, and I actually want to come back to something that I said yesterday so that we can argue about it or not argue about it. But you thought that I was making a parallel yesterday when I brought up the fact of a commercial, and the commercial was about the candidate here in North Carolina and their ex-husbands and their records and all of that. And you said, and as I recall, you made the comparison of the Democratic person, the Republican person, and what they said a long time ago. But that was about what they said about an issue. Now, whether they changed their mind about that issue or whether they have evolved, and I do think that they might have evolved around that issue or not, that is one thing. What this commercial is doing is definitely pulling up personal past history about the family. It's talking about like the fact that they got divorced for this reason and that reason, and it's not talking about it in the context of the issue, like around abortion or whatever. It's more of a personal attack, and that's where I was wondering about.
You sat there and contradicted what you said a couple of weeks ago, when you had a crack at a black Republican because of his anti-feminist statements while he was at college. Now, I don't know what the boys were like at your school or the boys are like at your college, right? But in my experience, frat boys do not generally say particularly responsible things. They don't act responsibly, and they're not particularly politically correct. They get out there and they find the thing that's going to upset people, and they just go with it because they can, because they're frat boys. Right, that's what they do, and you wanted to bring that up. And I'll just remind you. I played a Republican ad from a black Republican in relation to Nick's favorite topic, has decided to disappear now before I get us taken off the air again. Right, I played the ad a couple of times on the show, right, about the Second Amendment, and what happened? Because he said, well, if the AR-15 is the only thing standing between you and a bunch of angry Democrats, and then showed a bunch of Klan members with him holding an AR-15. Now, I thought that was hilarious. So did everyone else in Australia. We thought it was great. It's not our country. We don't care. But we got taken off the air for it.
Just for the record, Counselor, I do not support any of the statements made, nor do I know any of the people that are making the statements.
Hold on a second. This is more towards Lee, since he's the only one out among us.
What is this, tail hook?
That I'm aware of.
We go back to the
this is my question
90s here?
Because he's the only one that has run for office that I'm aware of, and all of that, because Steve's not here and all of that. But don't you think that some of these attacks have become too much? And that's where I'm was concerned about when I was watching this ad have become too much, and they've been doing this for a while, to the personal side. It is one thing to bring up, and I hear what you're saying, Shaquille, it's one thing to bring up the history of somebody's views, even if they're doing something in college that may be a childish prank or whatever, but it was still a view, whether it was childish or not. It is another thing to make attacks on the person based on what they found in a divorce court settlement twice.
Mark, it's even worse here in North
Carolina. My question
Carolina.
to Lee is, aren't these attacks becoming too personal?
Mark, it's even worse here in North Carolina.
I understand what you're saying, Mark.
Are lying.
Can we go back a few months?
Ads. They're lying. Just in other words, they could never get away with
sometimes
this
they're not lying.
anywhere else.
Sometimes they're not lying. And Mark has a point, but I understand something. When Trump was running for office, everything was fair game. Him getting off a bus in a private conversation, grabbing somebody from my body part. What does that have to do with anything? But that was fair game.
Yeah,
I don't understand. Are we changing
the way that it gets spun, Lee,
just because it's fair game doesn't mean it's correct.
This is how he.
No, Nick, I agree with you, but we have to be consistent. We shouldn't have.
I think it's fair.
What's wrong with the media putting these ads on? That when these people they put on ads literally, and I fact checked them from both parties, Democrats and Republicans. I fact checked them both. They're both just a pile of lies. In other words, there's very little truth inside their ad. A lot of it's just slander, defamation, everything that you could never get away with if they weren't.
And they should be called on it.
This is how he first got accused of being this sexist, because he said he'd grab females by a certain body part. And the way the Democrats spun it was as if the people that voted for him heard those comments and went, "Yeah, that's the man for me," right? That's not what happened. People didn't vote for him because he said that. People voted for him because they were sick of the political establishment and that sort of thing. Yep. Now, if you remember Biden said, I run into places where other people, I can't remember exactly what he said, stumble or something, and they showed the ad, or they showed the footage of Donald Trump slowly walking down that icy ramp, right, to try to say that,
at West Point.
His health is not great. He's walking so slowly. Right. But then they get upset when people say, we don't believe that a very gentle Zephyr was actually so hard, it blew him down, not once or twice, but 3 times. What happened? Were the Russians in charge of the wind that day? I mean, come on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I just think the thing is, they showed Biden hugging people and putting his hands on people. I mean, both parties are absolutely.
He's a creeper, man. I'm telling you.
Nick, you think I was in office?
He's a creeper. I don't like him. He's a creeper.
Chris, for your grandchildren, you'll be pleased to know.
They distort the truth.
Chris, for your grandchildren, you will be pleased to know that they have got shirts out for kids now that says "Hiding from Biden." That was the shirts that came out for the last election. I'm sure they'll be brought back. I'll send you a link.
Wow.
Well, they have other shirts. I'm Biden's child.
I have another thing that came up in the news that I am just totally flabbergasted by, and I'm sure y'all going to be sitting there going like, yeah, why are they even surprised about this and everything? Because we've actually had a friend, and I'm hoping to have him back on the show, that falls into this category because, you know, at every election, particularly here in the United States, and I think in other countries as well, there are poll workers. And a lot of times these poll workers are working for a candidate or working for campaigns and all of that, particularly those that are on the outside and all in that space. So apparently, according to Politico, election officials are growing concerned about a new danger in politics. That groups looking to undermine election results will try to install their supporters as poll workers. As one who's been in Durham for a number of years, and I've seen who some of the poll workers are, and I've seen definitely even in some more Republican-based cities who the poll workers are and everything. Are we shocked at this? And why is this even like being brought up in the news? Because like I said, we have had Jan Cromartie, and I'm hoping to have him back on at some point because he's done work on campaigns, including Steve's campaign. And definitely a lot of times these folks are working for PACs and working for other groups. And I know that they're supposed to be non-biased, but a lot of times they are very biased. And so I'm sitting there going like, the frontline election workers, and of course these are the folks who do everything from checking the ballots to processing the mail ballots and all of that. So there are some concerns that these folks will be leaning one way or the other, and will therefore try to influence the vote or try to change the vote or move the vote or all of this. We saw this in different states. So is this something that we need to be concerned about? Chris, you're a data person. Is this something that they actually need to be concerned about? Are you worried that there might be some more Democratic leaning? Because I know that you're a Republican, Democratic leaning people at your poll. And do you even pay attention to who's at the poll?
Interestingly enough, my district in North Carolina has a congressional representative that's Democrat. And it amazes me because they cover Raleigh, Durham, and of course, rural areas up north where I am. So it's interesting to point out that there's probably, and I'll have to do the data pull on this, Mark. I will bet you money that these pockets of Democrats that are within this area of North Carolina, I have to trust them because they're probably going to be many of the poll workers that are going to be there. So I think it's an element of trust. Here's my deal. I'm willing to trust somebody until I don't. Right. If they in fact come out or they do something in front of me, or somebody gets a video of them doing something or whatever else, that tends to lower my trust level of the poll workers. I mean, it's the same thing in the military. You trust somebody in the military, you trust that person next to you until they shoot themselves in the foot, or they shoot you in the foot, or they shoot then it's kind of like, hey, I don't think you should have a weapon. So I think it's that type of thing that this Wolf of Wall Street. And there you go. What I wanted to say real quick was that if you put up my screen. Just real quick, I just want to put up Ukraine just real quick, and I know we're going to get to Ukraine in a little bit, but this is basically from the Institute of the Study of War, which is really, really, really good. That's what it's called, and it's a website. It has some really good stuff on there. I really, really highly recommend people go to that. But basically, this is what's going on, and I keep telling Sasha this. Is basically they're pushing east, they're pushing east. Hey, that's good, but they better protect their flanks up in this area, especially with Belarus. I would not trust Belarus in any way, shape, or form. They're right there. There's Kyiv, and there's Belarus right here. I'm telling you right now, if they keep pushing into these areas, it's going to be like Stalingrad all over again. They're pushing in. All of a sudden, Russia's going to just come right down and destroy it. And Sasha, I get it. The generals of the United States are the ones that are doing it. Yeah, really, the same generals that had the Afghan withdrawal, the same generals that sit there and say, oh, yeah, we're going to do Iraq. The same generals these same generals, Clausewitz even said, war is too important to be left to the generals. He said it. Let's stop the bullcrap.
The generals are apparently
$54 billion we're giving you to get these Russians the hell out of your country. I get that, but you better protect your flanks, or I'm telling you right now, things are going to turn. And
we're definitely going to get to Russia. I just wanted to get to the
and where the Russians are going to get these people to attack from the north and from Belarus and so on? Where they don't have enough troops even to defend these little territories what they're trying to annex from Ukraine. They don't have. They're losing every war, every minute. Right now, Ukrainians are just marching forward. They cannot be stopped right now.
Until they are.
Russia is fighting against the strongest army in Europe.
I agree. But they better protect their flanks. I'm just saying.
No.
Here,
Russians have to defend their flanks, not Ukrainians. Ukrainians don't have to defend anything.
Sasha, I appreciate your passion. I really do.
And one more thing. Listen, you are the former colonel. Should not be so critical about your own generals. It's not nice.
I really appreciate
it. Generals is only what's left in United States because all these liars and thieves, all this representative and senators, and this is bullcrap. That's what really is bullcrap. Your generals are and right now, when in October starts working.
Hold on a second. Speaking of the bullcrap, well, one thing I was going to get back to the whole
I love you, Sasha.
Thing and
I
all
just
that.
love you to death.
We'll come back to the Ukraine and what's going on there. But this gentleman out of Michigan talking about the election workers, says it's kind of troubling to see in the wake of 2020 this new element of election workers who are there more to police things than they are just to perform the function of being an election worker and facilitating the democratic process in communities. And like I've said before, I'm sitting there seeing a lot of people that are partisans that are doing these jobs, and that's where I'm actually wondering if we can't get rid of some of the partisan politics that goes on in the election results as well. And the other thing I was going to bring up again, Shaquille will love this, is that once again they are digging into a Republican candidate. It is a well-known Republican candidate. Now whether he stutters or doesn't stutter, whether he has some other things going on in his life, but now they are bringing up the past in his life as well. And yes, I did admire him as a football player. I don't know that I admire his politics because I'm still trying to learn about his politics. But Herschel Walker is having to deny reports that he paid for a girlfriend's abortion. So that is the latest news going on in that race. And apparently he said that they'll do anything to win this seat. And that's his race against Warnock. And apparently it's a very tight race and all along those lines. So in that case, is it okay for them to bring up the fact of the abortion, particularly considering the fact the Roe versus Wade decision and all along those lines, even though it happened way back, who knows when.
You guys like to conflate so many different things. What does Roe v. Wade have to even do with abortion? No, I'll rephrase that.
Yeah,
what does the Dobbs case have to do with abortion? The Dobbs case that reversed Roe v. Wade, explain to me what part of that was the Supreme Court weighing in on abortion?
Absolutely not.
Is it Roe versus Wade about and correct me if I'm wrong, but
let's leave Roe versus Wade. Let's just talk about the Dobbs case. What part of that case actually dealt with abortion?
But nothing. The Dobbs case versus Roe versus Wade, and Roe versus Wade is when abortion is the whole conversation.
What part of the ruling has actually had anything to do with abortion? The question that was before the Supreme Court, at least the question that was answered by the Supreme Court, was whether or not they in the judicial branch had the right to effectively make law about abortion, or whether that was the province of the legislature. That was what they ruled on. And they said, look, they didn't say
the state
abortion should be illegal. They didn't say that abortion should be illegal. All they said was this should go to the legislature. And because the 10th Amendment does not say that the federal government can step in on this, it should be a state issue. That's what they said.
But you just answered your own question, because you just said that it is a decision around abortion. You just said that in your statement.
What you guys have tried to do is you guys have tried to have debates about the morality of abortion and whether abortion should be legal or should not be illegal, and then blame the Supreme Court and say, well, the Supreme Court are infringing on women's rights, etc. If women's rights are at stake, then you should have some more faith in the state legislatures to be able to pass this. And if you don't, then have a movement and ask for there to be a constitutional amendment. You've had many others. You've got 27 amendments, right? Have another amendment and have that passed. But what you guys instead goes, well, look, if you think that abortion should be legal, if you think that healthcare choices should be a woman's right, the Supreme Court has infringed on women's rights by kicking it back to where it belongs, which is the state legislature. So therefore, we should just get rid of the Supreme Court. We should introduce term limits. We should stack the Supreme Court. And by the way, all Republicans are a threat to democracy. But we don't understand why the half of the people in the country that voted for the other side are so divided. We just don't get it.
Well, I think hold on a second, Chris. I do want to hear your point and everything, but y'all will be glad to know, and I know he's been busy with his presentation, so I'm hoping to get him on sometime before the 17th, and I know you love debating him and everything, but I just got an email on yesterday. Solomon Gibson is actually doing a presentation on, and I think it's on the 17th of this month, on the legal myth of fetal personhood. And he brought that up a couple of times on our show, so hopefully he'll come back on and explain the presentation. But he's actually making a presentation about that on the 17th, because that is something that he has brought up as to whether.
So that again proves my point. See, it's fascinating to me how I have sat here show after show and said, and in fact, Lee sent me a text message about it when I've said, I will not tell you where I stand. I will not tell you whether I think it should be legal or I think it should be illegal, or whether it's moral or not, I won't tell you where I stand. I'll just discuss the legal issues. And Lee, who wasn't on the show, texted me and said, "Oh, why?" And I answered him, okay, as to why. And I've had many messages from some of my fans saying, "How come you won't say where you stand?" I'm not going to tell you where I stand on that issue. But what I find really fascinating is that the debate is about, at the moment, it's about the morality of it and whether it should be legal or not legal. And your way of trying to do this is to try to attack the Supreme Court. If you believe it should be legal, take it up with your local state legislature. If you think it should be legal across the whole country, then go for a constitutional amendment. If you believe it should not be legal, take that up with the state legislature local to where you live. And if you are not happy, take it up with the federal legislature. Start a movement. But don't sit there and attack the Supreme Court because the system of governance in America doesn't allow for it. And then worst of all, you try to compare yourself not just to Europe, but to places like Canada. Canada's rules are more restrictive than what they are in America.
Well, I think Canada needs to really focus on something, and that is the amount of cars that are being stolen. They've gone up 45%, specifically, Sasha, BMWs and Lexus. I would definitely put your car behind closed doors somewhere. I mean, these suckers are going up. They're putting, to talk about numb minds that are doing these stealings.
Wait a minute.
So here's what they do. Mark, you got to hear this.
No, I want to hear this, but I'm still trying to figure out these cars because, like I said, BMWs I still have a reputation as being somewhat of an elite car and everything. But that other car that you said, I'm sitting there going like,
Lexus,
wait a minute, is that even
BMW is an elite car?
I know.
Well,
it's interesting. It's interesting because these thieves, they put little sheets over top of the headlights so that when the alarm goes off, of course you won't see the headlights go off. So and then when the alarm goes off, they all run. This is what is wrong. Sasha, are thieves this stupid?
Okay.
But no, they were
doing
that.
I bet you they're Russian. That's the problem. They're Russian. See.
Okay, number one,
Probably Russians.
both BMW and Lexus, they're well-built cars.
Okay.
I used to own both of them, and they're really, really good cars. Now, so why in Canada they're getting all these cars and not in US? Maybe US doesn't have enough of those cars. So they figured out that it's much more profitable to operate in Canada. Now, from Canada, it's fairly easy to ship these cars overseas. All you need is to get them to Halifax. And from Halifax and local authorities in Halifax, I think they don't care, especially if they're paid their fees and so on. They really don't care. I mean, this car is in Canada or it's out of Canada. What changes? All these cars are insured. So the owners are being reimbursed by insurance companies. So it's a pretty viable business.
Yeah.
No,
But
it's
amazing.
I thought there was an attempt I think it was around Michigan, but there was some way that you can gerrymander the not gerrymander, but you can you can rig the electricity in the car to start the car
With a
and there was
USB
lot of that going
flash
on in
drive.
Michigan, and
Yes.
that it was kind of like the way that they were grabbing the cars and running them around for joyrides. And I know that was happening in Michigan. I think it was happening in other parts of the U.S., but it was a way that the cars are constructed that you can rig it in such a way that all you got to do is go in there and figure the car and everything. And I think they were even using some of the things that we talked about yesterday, which is some of that whole cyber ways of getting into the car and making the car drive. And by the way, that's where I was going to pivot back to the whole conversation around the Ukraine and everything.
Yeah.
Sasha, I'm trying to figure this out. If Putin is very much evil. My dad, who was very much into the civil rights struggle, thinks that the man is one of the most is the evilest man to ever walk the face of the world and everything. And he's not necessarily a very much of a conservative. He's very much on the liberal side, probably even more liberal than I am, and all along those lines. But my question is, if cybersecurity is such a big deal at everything, why don't we just rig Putin's computer and everything and eliminate him and whatever he's doing that way? Because it sounds to me like that would just be a simple way to end this war. If it's such a big problem, and if we can solve it that way, then that would be a non-violent way. We don't have to worry about the nuclear war that people are thinking might be happening. We don't have to worry about this and that. We just have a cyber attack on the man, and then we eliminate the whole thing. So why don't we just do a cyber attack?
Is this
Number
essentially
one, he is advised by Snowden. Number two, it will take
that
so
traitor.
much time to organize,
traitor.
Mark, what you are suggesting, that by that
Traitor.
time, Putin simply will not be alive. So you will just waste a lot of time and resources.
I got another joke. Ukraine and Russia, right? Why is Russia losing the war with Ukraine? Because they put in more than they take out.
That was
How's
bad.
that?
That
How's
was
that?
also
How's that?
bad.
They put in. They put in.
I don't know how to. Oops, he's gone.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. I think we should just leave him off
Okay,
there.
our ratings just went up. That was
Yeah.
great.
Is that the ejector seat for the Air Force guy? So Sasha, what Mark is thinking, because it's a sort of Democrat strategy, is, well, look, we've got this issue with Putin. What we'll do is we'll just cancel him. We'll tell him he can't be on Facebook. We'll tell him his Twitter account is restricted, and we'll just cancel it. That's sort of the Democrats' new idea, and they'll probably run with that for the next election, I'd say.
Well,
You know what
if you
Putin
think
is
about
going
it,
to do in this case? He will join Donald
social.
Trump's network.
Through social, yeah.
Absolutely.
if you think about it, it's a really stupid war. Think about this war. The United States decides to invade Canada because the thing
Hey,
is, we believe the
get your hands
Canadians
off- get
are
your hands off
harboring
Canada.
Nazis.
Revenge
You
for
want us to
the
come
Western
down and
world.
burn your
Launch
White
an
House
all-out
down again?
attack to
Get your
take
hands off Canada.
Toronto. I mean, this is a stupid war by a stupid person.
Nick, what does Canada have that we
You wanna
want?
attack Canada?
But Nick, I want to tell you,
We're going to attack Canada, baby.
Sasha,
We're coming
What
after
is
you.
What's happening in that
Lee,
case?
I can answer.
Canada will
for you
give
very
up on the
easily.
first day.
What is that,
Lee, I
And
can
Shaquille?
you
answer that
will
for you
own
very
Canada, and you
What is
will
that,
have
Shaquille?
Saskatchewan and Alberta and Ontario and Quebec and so on.
I
You
want
have
Calgary.
so much land that you won't even know what to do with that.
Lee, I
Shaquille,
can
what-
answer- I can answer that
Yeah,
question
Shaquille,
for
please
you
answer that
very,
question.
very
What do
easily.
what's in
What does
Canada?
Canada
that we
We're
want?
going to tell Russia, don't interfere with our attack on Canada.
Lee,
Uh,
I can
yeah,
answer
yeah.
that question for you very easily. What does Canada have that the US
Please do.
wants?
They
Oil.
have Vancouver,
Trees.
a beautiful city.
Oil. That stuff
They
from
have
the
oil.
pipeline
They have
was going to
they
deliver
have
to you. That's
oil.
what
They
that
do have
shit
oil.
that you want.
Shaquille,
Yeah.
we don't take our
I
own oil.
think they have Nazis
Exactly,
up
that's
there.
why you
We
want
need to
theirs.
invade Canada.
Okay.
Where's Donald Trump telling us we need to invade Canada? We need to take over Canada. And
Here's
tell
a
Russia
question for
not
you.
to interfere.
You had to
what?
mention
Hold on a
Trump.
second.
He prefers- he
I hear what you're
prefers
saying
just-
about Canada, but I'm gonna come back to.
He feels about countries the way he feels about women's bodies. He would prefer to be south of the border, not north.
You mean he
Oh, that
wants
was
to take over
wrong too.
Mexico?
That was so wrong. But I do
You
have a
need to
question
invade
for
Mexico.
y'all.
That was
Hold
better
on a
than
second.
Chris's efforts.
Hey, Shaquille, because
Mark?
you love things that go on in the world that paint the Democrats in a bad light, just like we sometimes like to paint the Republicans in a bad light. And apparently there is a new criticism, and I think that if I remember correctly, New York City is under Democratic rule and all of that. And there is now
Well, you had to
criticism
think about that to remember.
there
it,
is
didn't you?
now criticism about the migrants and what they're doing, because apparently they are constructing temporary shelter for the migrants in parking lots. So that is what they have decided to do in New York City, and they have relocated the migrant tent city to Randall's Island. So what is y'all thoughts about that? Because apparently we're gonna have a bunch of bunch of migrants in the parking lots.
Okay, let's talk about Europe. Let's talk about Europe for a second. Austria, Hungary, and Serbia. They're having
Leave
all
Austria-
kind of
leave Austria
issues.
alone.
Oh,
I spent a long time in Austria. Leave them alone. Be
no,
nice.
I didn't say
Be
Australia.
nice. They're my clients. Be nice.
There's a common confusion there between Australia and Austria. You know, but Austria, Hungary, and Serbia, they are building a wall. That's right. They're going to build a wall so that people can't come through Serbia to get to Austria and Hungary, because they have these migrants that are coming through, and they're having all kind of issues with that. So they're literally going to build a wall so that people can't come through there.
And
So,
Mexicans are paying for it, or what?
Mexico's going to pay for it.
Hey, Nick, you're gonna love this one because you were talking
Look,
about the
you've
weather
gotta be-
and
you've gotta
everything
be
on one of
fair.
our other
You
shows.
have-
So you're gonna love this
you
one.
you have to be fair to Donald Trump, right? I think
No, we don't have to be fair to Donald Trump. Why do we have to be fair to Donald
He
Trump?
applied very
Fair
good
to
reason.
anybody.
He applied very, very good reason to this. The Chinese built a
Lord.
wall thousands of years ago, and you don't see many Mexicans over there, do you? There's no Mexicans in China. So it makes perfect sense to build a wall to keep the Mexicans out in America.
Oh, there we go.
No, but hold on a second, because I think Nick is going to love this one, because I want to hear. This is the reason that they are given, because we were talking about the weather and people that do crazy things like living in flood zones and stuff like that on one of our other shows or in one of our conversations. But this is the reason, and I want y'all to listen to this: the Big Apple, that being New York, will relocate and downsize its first tent city for migrants from the Bronx to Randall's Island due to flooding issues. So that's the reason that they're going to move them, is because of the flooding issues. So they have
Mark, I would go farther. I would go even farther.
Which
I
proves that climate change is racist, because it's affecting the immigrants that are in the tent cities in New York, that they now have to be moved. Hence the reason why me driving a Bentley somehow is a racist thing.
Rice.
That
Again,
affects
we're bringing up rice.
South American immigrants.
Mayor Adams, last time I checked, was we can use that
I
term.
would go farther than that.
Go further.
In New York, you would need, actually, from going from Bronx to, for example, Manhattan, you need a visa. You cannot move from Bronx to Manhattan without visa. So there will be a consulate in Bronx. You apply, you submit all the documentation or so on, and in about 3 to 4 months, you will get answer whether you are accepted, your visa is good, or you are rejected.
So now we can call it the Big Crapple. Then is that
this is a true story, though. Newark Airport will be delisted as a New York City airport. You know that in April, New York City and Newark's not an airport anymore.
That's true.
Don't give Chris any material for him to make another dad joke. He doesn't need a visa; he needs a MasterCard, because he's thinking it. I just want to talk about Austria just for a moment, though, because obviously my time is predominantly spent on the border between Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Germany, and Austria, and most of the people that I actually work with are Austrian, who now live and work in Switzerland, or they live in Switzerland and work in Liechtenstein. And I'm going to tell you, some of the places I've been, these are the whitest places on earth. I've never seen anything whiter in my life. They're whiter than Sweden. But you know what? They've welcomed me in with open arms. I don't think that they are as sort of exclusive as what you guys are trying to make out, that they just don't like immigrants, they just don't want people to come to those countries. That's just not the case. They're a proud people, and they say, look, if you're going to come here, please contribute something. If you don't want to contribute anything, go. If you just want to come here and attack our culture, go. I don't attack their culture. I want to know more about it. I'm terrible at languages, but I started learning. My German is awful. All I know how to do is swear in German, but I tried. And I will continue to try when I get back to Switzerland. So I actually don't think that that's unreasonable, and it's so bizarre to me that these left-wing places in America say we should have open borders, let them all come in. It doesn't matter if they can speak the language, it doesn't matter. And when places like Texas, Florida say our schools are overrun, our health system is overrun, we don't have enough places to put them, help us out, the federal government says, well, no, we're not going to help you. And those other liberal places keep voting for it. And then when you've had 3 million people cross into those southern states across the southern border.
But Shaquille,
what about the gotaways, Nick? What about the gotaways?
Shaquille, hold on a second.
The numbers are almost 3 million.
Only
That's
2 million.
1%. That's close to 1% of the population of the United States right now.
Right.
Has crossed in the last 2 years illegally across the border. That's 1% of the people that are over there. And yet you ship 50 people to Martha's Vineyard and everyone melts down. You ship a couple of hundred people to New York, where New York City has 20 million people living there. You ship a couple of hundred people there. Oh no, how could you possibly do this? You ship people up to Chicago. Oh, this is just some political stunt. Is it less of a political stunt for you to bring those people into the southern states?
Well, hold on a second, Shaquille. You'll be glad to know that Mayor Eric Adams up there in New York has blasted one of your favorite targets, because actually on yesterday, today is Tuesday, so yesterday he blasted the far left, and he's blasted them for their inaction and silence regarding the quote-unquote devastating impact of the U.S. border crisis on New York City. So doing an unrelated news conference so they was probably talking about something else. Adams, a Democrat, teed off on the progressive wing of his party after being asked about the tent city he is having built in the Bronx to process and temporarily house the migrants flooding into the city. He said the far right is doing the wrong thing. The far left is doing nothing. I mean, the silence, the silence I'm hearing. So he was actually wanting to hear more from, like, I guess, AOC and some of these other folks. So he's like saying that there's no word from them at all. So he's like saying
Mark, if he's going to blast them so much, why doesn't he just end the sanctuary city status? Okay, if Chris Greco happened to be hanging out at Mar-a-Lago and he happened to take a state secret, right? And he showed it, and now he was on the run. And I said, look, Chris, I like you. You've got gorgeous family members. Come on in. I'll shelter. I'll give you shelter, and I'll help you, and I'll feed you, and I'll get you out of the way. I'd get charged with aiding and abetting a criminal, right? Even from Australia, I'd get charged with that. And then I'd have people kidnap me in the middle. Don't put me on here by myself. I'd have people kidnap me and take me to America, and I'd be charged, and all sorts of things would happen to me. So why exactly can state governors and state government employees say we're going to aid and abet people that have committed federal offences and them not be charged?
Well, as I've said before, if Governor Newsom, if Governor, lawyer and everything, hold on a second. No,
don't hold on. You interrupted me. If Governor Newsom wants to sit there and say that Ron DeSantis should be charged with kidnapping, a federal offence, he should be charged with kidnapping, and those are the charges the DOJ should bring about, why shouldn't Republicans say, well, given that you are breaking our immigration laws, okay, and aiding and abetting people that have committed federal offences by entering our country illegally, because you would like to maintain power, because you think you're going to get a vote, that's a vast conspiracy to undermine the laws of the federal government, in which case you should all be up on RICO indictments. Why would that not be a reasonable thing to do?
I hear what you're saying, and I don't know the legal part, and I want to hear from Nick, our legal lawyer, or anybody else.
No, I want to hear from you.
Hold on a second. I'm asking the question because I don't know the answers, but I do know that Durham is a sanctuary city. I know that even some places around here are sanctuary cities that are not even institutions. Because, like I said, I know Durham is a sanctuary city, but there are also churches, and I think churches have that right to be sanctuaries and all of that because they don't necessarily agree with what's going on. I mean, there have been sanctuaries from laws forever. We can make a parallel between a sanctuary city and what happened with the whole abolition kind of concept and everything. There is no similarity whatsoever to abolitionists that wanted to end slavery and sanctuary cities that want to pack the electorate. There is absolutely no sanctuary cities, as I understand sanctuary cities, are to protect those immigrants that have been caught up in this whole immigration battle. So why is that not a similarity to immigration battle? There's no immigration battle. They cross the border illegally. There's no battle. They just said, we prefer it over there, so we're going to come in. But if you're a dreamer and you cross with your parents, and this is not just the illegals as well. There have been some political cases, because there are definitely some political cases. Let me ask you a question, Mike. If I come to Durham, right, on my visa waiver ESTA, I come to Durham and I overstay my visa, do you think that I wouldn't be noticed? Do you really think that the people in Durham, the governor of Durham, would say, well, Shaquille's an Australian British citizen who's overstayed his visa, which means he's now here illegally, but we'll give him sanctuary? Do you really believe that would happen? No way. Well, first off, in terms of the whole visa situation, that's a whole other conversation, because I think there's a lot of people that overstay their visas and they don't pay attention to their visas. Because I think, even though near here where I'm at Duke, there's some people that have got student visas and they have long past their time of their student time and they're still here in the town. So I do think that a lot of the visa laws and the visa rules are not always upheld. Now, Chris was in the military, and maybe he knows better than I do, but I understand that there are a lot of people that are on visas that have got that visa, and that was a quote-unquote legal visa, and they have still stayed over that visa time.
Mark, I have a simple question for you. Yes or no? Sanctuary cities, are they breaking the federal law or not? What are they doing with federal law?
Are they breaking the federal law?
They're breaking federal law, are they not?
I'd have to see what the federal law is that they are breaking. Like I said,
that's why it's called sanctuary city.
He doesn't
But,
want to
but I'm
answer
saying,
it.
but
He doesn't
are
want to
there
answer
not
the question.
exceptions? Are
That's
there
the
not
thing. You don't want to
exceptions?
answer the question. Like very simple concepts. You know they're breaking the federal law. You know that. Just admit that.
I don't know that
and
they're
we can
breaking the
debate
federal
whether
law
they
because, like
should
I
or
said,
shouldn't.
in order
But
to
don't sit there and
establish
go,
it,
well, I
the
don't know
lawyers
if they are or
that are
not. You know
there
they are.
have to know something about what they are allowing them to do. So if they're allowing them to do it and set up a sanctuary cities, then they must not be breaking the law, or they must have found a way around the law because there are
No,
sanctuary
they
cities
haven't
all
found-
over the
they haven't
country.
found a way
So that my
around the
thing
law
is that
at
if
all.
they are being established and they are being set up for whatever reasons they're being set up, then I'm sure that their legal advisors have told them what is allowed and not allowed.
Mark, they're setting him up and thumbing their noses at the federal government.
I think,
They're
Mark,
daring
think
them.
I think,
But
Mark,
are they
that there
necessarily
there are
thumbing- are they
legal
necessarily thumbing
recourses.
their nose at the federal government?
No, I think there are legal recourses that every single person that crosses that border has. There are free legal assistance that they can get at any time during their approach or when they cross that border. There are so many free legal pro bono all over the place. I know we just came from Maryland. There's plenty in Maryland. I don't know how many immigrants there are in Maryland, but they have plenty of free legal advice in Maryland. So the bottom line is why set up sanctuary cities when you can sit there and say, look, if you need legal advice, these are the legal people that can help you do that. You know, we don't have to sit back and say, we're going to do our tax dollars to make sure that you get legal advice. No, here's free legal people that are willing to do this stuff pro bono. Go ahead and do that. Setting up all the infrastructure to be able to do
why
this.
not offer that to everybody then, Chris?
There is free.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why not offer that to everybody? So I sit there and I've looked at a couple of different visas, right? Because I obviously spend a lot of time in the United States. And I said, look, sometimes I want to stay more than the 3 months that I'm allowed under the ESTA program. And I have to have a visa anyway because I occasionally take I have to have a visa and not use the ESTA because I occasionally take private jets into the United States. So what am I allowed to do? What are the options that I've got available to me? And somebody said, why don't you just take the EB5 investor visa? It comes with a green card. I said, the hell, I don't want a green card. Definitely don't want a green card. What else could I do? And I've discussed tree trader visas and all these different things, right? Now, there are a whole heap of different options, but I'm going to pay, and it'll probably cost me 50 to 100 grand to get the advice on the right kind of visa for me to be able to come to the United States whenever I want to. I've got no intention of working there. I'm not going to be reliant on American social services, but I also don't have to pay tax there. What's the right kind of visa for me? Are there any free services that would relieve me of that $100,000 expense?
Well,
I
actually,
don't think so. But if I instead said, hey, look, I'm coming over as an immigrant because life's really hard where I'm at. Would there be free or cheap legal services for me? No, is actually the answer. And I can tell you how I know that. Because coming from Fiji, okay, the majority, all of my family, if I go to Fiji now, there's hardly anybody who is related to me by blood that still lives in Fiji. You know where they are? They're either in New Zealand, they're in Vancouver, or they're in the United States, okay? And they didn't just get to cross over that southern border. When the coup happened in Fiji, they didn't just get to go across to America and then go into Mexico and then walk across the border into the United States and just claim asylum. They had to go through a process, as have many other people around the world that would like to go to the United States because of the opportunities that are afforded to them. These free legal services and sanctuary cities, they're not sanctuaries for everybody. They're just sanctuaries for the people that you can see. They're sanctuaries for the people that are south of your border, and that's it. And all the people that live in the Middle East, all the people that live in Africa, all the people that live in Asia who have had, poor lives that would like to actually improve them by coming to America, they miss out. And that's why I keep talking about this, because it's not just an American issue. The UK does it, Canada does it, Australia does it. We need to pay a bit more attention to everybody and not just one group, because when you look after one group, everybody else feels a little bit hard done by.
Okay, let's talk about Kim Kardashian. She just got fined $1.3 million
about Kim as well.
by the SEC. $1.3 million.
Chris, what happened there? Just so you know, Chris and Lee, what happened there was my point was so good that Nick had to change the topic.
No, it's the thing is you're
saving someone's
honestly,
backside.
Shaquille, you want to be honest. What your point was very boring and mundane. So I figured we should better move to a more exciting topic.
I don't understand why you're wasting
and I
time
think
on
Chris will verify
immigration
that.
to discussion this when
Chris?
you have paid politicians that you elected. So why don't do the job? Why they don't make the laws or change the laws or get out of the laws completely and so on? Why you're doing that for free and just wasting everybody's time? That's what I don't understand.
Who, me, because
everybody.
Everybody. Shaquille, I've got a question. Shaquille, hold on a second.
I can think of nothing more fun than to attack American politicians online. I think that's great. I'm like a troll in person. Look at George Gascon. Look at George Gascon.
I've got a question for you, since y'all are asking questions of me and everything.
Attorney of LA.
Shaquille, I've got a question for you. Hold on.
I've got a quick question for you. He's breaking the law by doing that.
Nick, what's about Kardashian? What's happening?
Kim Kardashian, you'll love this, Shaquille. She agreed to the settlement. She paid over 1.2 million, maybe 1.3 million in fines to the SEC because she was promoting Ethereum, some cryptocurrency that went bankrupt, basically. And what they said, even though she said it was an ad, they were using her and quite a few celebrities they paid them money to go and tell them how great cryptocurrency is. And on your show,
she wasn't disclosing it. Nick, she wasn't
disclosing it. She said they had a little slash. It was an ad, but apparently the SEC didn't buy that. But on our show, I remember Sasha, we were talking how bad it was for like months before the cryptocurrency collapsed. In the meantime, celebrities were getting paid mucho dinero to go promote how great it was, and then people lost their tail on it. But
I've something on the share screen. Put my share screen up. This says it all.
Chris will know the answer to this.
There you go. There it is. Kim Kardashian is in yellow. Red is immigration.
There you go, baby.
And there's Ukraine casualties.
There we go.
So there we go. This is what the U.S. wants. They're talking about Kim Kardashian, then immigration, then the Ukraine casualties. Because I think that's
why I
important.
switched the thing.
Hey, can you bring me
what I was talking about is boring. The thing
Should I bring up your name, Shaquille?
Kim Kardashian.
Shaquille.
There you go. Shaquille, boring. Kim Kardashian.
I'll be negative.
Data Man has proven me correct.
He's down there with Ukraine casualties. Sasha, he's down there with Ukraine casualties. Look at that. He's all the way down. He's down here.
Actually, I've had a couple of spikes. Look, I've had a couple of
spikes.
Yeah,
you do. Well, actually, that's the Ukraine casualties. That's blue. But hey, let's just call it Shaquille. That's good. That's
to Nick's comment though. Sasha and I, we don't agree on everything, right? For example, I think I'm a better chess player. He doesn't agree. But when it comes to trade the markets, him and I will have different opinions. I think this thing will go up, or I think this thing will go down, or I think we should trade it this way, or whatever. But instead of people listening to Sasha and I, who make a living or make some income from trading, they'll go and listen to somebody who's got bum implants. I find it's like people that say, "Oh, Versace, I've got to go wear this Versace stuff because that's the fashion." Have you seen the person in charge of Versace? Why are you taking fashion advice from this person? So, I find it fascinating. Surely you would want to listen to the people that have actually been successful and have proven their success rather than morons. But Nick, tell us more about Kim Kardashian's butt. Oh, he's left. He's left us all together.
I know. Well, I guess world politics. I guess pretty much we can't. After that, what can we say? And we're done.
But it's
Major
because
calls.
of those.
I
Burkina
don't think we
Faso,
can continue a
Gabon.
meaningful conversation about Kardashians without need.
No, we're back in everything I was having.
Isn't she
some-
Ukrainian? Isn't Kardashian Ukrainian? Isn't that a Ukrainian thing?
I think so, yeah.
And,
She might
and
be
there
one
you
of
go.
those Ukrainians.
Or
that
maybe
she's doing really
Polish.
good.
I'm not so sure.
Maybe.
Hey,
Maybe.
Shaquille,
Yak
I know
Shamash.
we're winding down, but one of the things I was going to ask you really quickly, and we can bring it up next tomorrow as well, is you were talking about the sanctuary cities, and one of the things that you oftentimes talk about is state rights and local government rights. And part of the argument is around sanctuary cities is that state and local governments have the right to not want to enforce the laws of the feds, and
Mark, that
therefore
was-
they're not required either.
Excellent point.
And
here we go.
That is such
I
a
have to
great
go
point,
to
Mark.
Ukrainian show.
My God.
I
You've-
agree.
Shaquille,
you've just
Shaquille,
See you, Sasha.
You've
Good
just
luck.
totally caught me out. Let me just read. for
Shaquille,
you
Mark's
the
in quicksand
Tenth
right
Amendment.
now.
There we go.
Let me
Mark's
just read
Mark's
for you the
standing in
10th
quicksand
Amendment.
right now.
What was that, Lee?
Mark is standing in quicksand right now. Let him kill himself.
You know, that's why. That's
He's
why
standing on my head, though. That's the problem.
Because he has to go and think about that.
Because I'm
The
like,
powers,
yeah, Mark. you
the
gotta-
powers. Let me just read for you the 10th Amendment, Mark, to answer your question. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution,
Mark
nor
Burgers, yes.
nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Immigration is something that has been allocated to the federal government. Chris is talking about it, has put in backstage Marbury v. Madison. This is something to do with the federal government. The state government has absolutely no right whatsoever to step in on that and choose not to enforce the laws. If the states don't want to do that, they can collectively get together and ask for an amendment. And what I might just point this out to you is of our good friend on Weed Wednesdays, okay, whilst it is legal or at least decriminalized to smoke marijuana in many US states, it is still a federal offense. That's why you can't bring it in. Do the states have the same argument that they're going to just break federal laws? No. The state of California doesn't encourage people to bring drugs in across the border, do they?
But they
why
also,
do they
but they
think
also do not. Hold on a second. You just covered yourself.
You're not allowed to do
Chris,
that.
look the other way.
Again, and I was bringing up the question from a lawyer, and I will bring in my lawyer friends as well because I do have some of those.
Oh, well, if your lawyer wants to have a little
They will
jab
definitely
against
bring up
somebody
that
who's not
is that
American
state
and not a
and local
lawyer,
governments
bring your
are
friend
not
on,
required to help
please.
the feds
Please
enforce
do.
federal law.
Please do.
Oh,
I've got
Oh.
books and books on the U.S. Constitution and U.S.
And I'm
case
sure you
law.
do. And I'm
Please,
talking about I've got some
bring it on.
constitutional lawyers that I will bring on as well that will argue my point because definitely there is the whole notion that you have brought up several times of the state's rights to actually enforce certain things. And you brought it up several times and the counter arguments of things. So as you say, I can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways either.
No,
nanny,
I'm not
nanny,
having it.
nanny,
No,
nanny.
I'm not having it both ways at all.
You are trying to have
I'm
it
not
both
having it
ways.
both ways at all. What are states' rights are states' rights when it comes to things like how elections are conducted, and what are federal rights are federal rights based on the Constitution. If
And
you
like I
don't,
said-
and if you don't like it, that's cool. Change your Constitution, but don't have a,
Well,
don't have
like
a
I
crack
said,
at
I
me
will-
because
we will-
I've read your rules and abide by them.
Well,
Mark, they're not
we will-
picking and choosing. They're being consistent with what's in the Constitution. You just have to read the 10th Amendment carefully.
Like I said, I will bring on my friends that will argue that case because, like I said, I have some friends in the whole sanctuary city movement and all of that. So I'm not going to pick a fight with both of you and Lee at this particular
If
time.
you
But
could-
we can have
if you
that
could find
conversation tomorrow
somebody-
'cause it's time for the Russian show.
If you can find someone to argue for the 18th Amendment, I'm happy to argue for the 21st. But any other constitutional right or anything else that you want to argue about, I'm right there.
Well, we'll make that happen.
Love you guys. Gotta
Love
go.
you.
Chris, take care.